he continued there as a postdoc after finishing PhD. Then he also worked as a visiting researcher at Physical Research Laboratory, Ahmedabad. Then he moved to Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Israel for a postdoc for about 2 years. And currently he is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry, Mar Ivanios College, Thiruvananthapuram. He has published about 12 research papers in peer-reviewed, high-impact journals. And during his PhD, he built an instrument to simulate astrochemical reactions. So on behalf of the Department of Chemistry, NSS College, Manjeri, I welcome Dr. Rabindrajan. Over to you, Dr. Rabindrajan.
Thank you, Vineet. Thank you everyone for inviting me and giving me opportunity to share something on the instrumentation and also especially on the mass spec. I hope you can see my slides. Is it fine now? Vineet? The slides are visible, right? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so as Vineet told, now I'm working as an assistant professor at Mar Ivanios College, Thiruvananthapuram. So it's like a very good opportunity during this pandemic season to have some kind of a scientific discussion sitting all over the places wherever we like, in the most comfortable zone we are. Still we can discuss something. So hope this will go good. So let me introduce the mass spectrometry. So most of you must be knowing mass spectrometry. So before going into mass spectrometry, I should give a short introduction on what is mass. So chemistry or whatever science which deals with matter. So what is matter? Matter is actually has mass, occupies space, has some shape, resists motion, etc. These are kind of definitions we have with respect to matter. So what is mass? So definition, it is a physical quantity characterizing a certain amount of matter. So it can be defined as a body or amount or quantity of a matter without any shape. So it has some quantity. So the SI unit of mass is kilogram, of course we know. And people usually talk about difference between mass and weight. When I used to talk with my degree students, UG students, and also with others, there is some confusion with mass and weight. So let me give that as an introduction first, and then we will go to what is mass spectrometry. So difference between mass and weight. So mass of an object is a measure of object's inertial property. As I told, how much amount it contains. So it has some kind of a quantity, and the definition says it is object's inertial property. Whether it is at rest, so you have some mass. So if it is moving, it will continue its inertial movement because it has a mass. So or the amount of matter it contains. So weight, unlike mass, it is object. It's a force. Measure of a force exerted on the object by gravity, or the force needed to support it. So these are actually two quantities, even though we used to say this is weight, this is mass and all those things, but mass is kind of an absolute thing and weight changes because it is weight is mass in kilogram into gravitational force of acceleration. So this is in unit, the unit of weight is actually Newton. Then why we always say weight? So let me say this one, mass is same, but weight will be different if we measure at Earth, Moon, space, Saturn, or like different planets, etc. Why? Because of course the gravitational pull is different. So how we measure mass? So that is the question. So how do we measure mass? We measure actually weight here in Earth, and that's why we used to keep telling these weight instead of mass, but actually it's the mass we are measuring, which I will tell you now. So the simple one is the weighing balance. The first one you can see, this is a chemical weight balance which is having almost 4-digit, which we are using early. Now we have, most of us have shifted to electronic balance. So what it is being done here in this weighing balance, we put exactly 1 kilogram of mass on one side, and then we keep something equivalent to that one, and then we compare the mass. So actually the weight exerted by 1 kilogram mass is being cancelled by the same amount of something else, and then we say that both are same. But what we are doing in a electronic balance, I will tell you in next few minutes. So before going into that, then we should say about the unit. So SI unit, as I told, it's a kilogram. It's defined as being equal to the mass of the international prototype of a kilogram. So what is a prototype? It's something like this. So there is a platinum iridium alloy kept at the BIPM under conditions specified by the first CGPM. This is a parliament kind of conference which was held in 1889, and it's being kept under vacuum so that this is not losing. And this is what is exactly 1 kilogram. And then what we do, we can buy a standard thing of 1 kilogram weight. So they have compared similar way as we have done in the previous case with the balance, and have made a 1 kilogram weight with steel or iron alloy. And then they say that again we can compare this one. So whether this one is accurate, definitely it won't be. It's almost accurate. But again, if you go to 3-4 decimals, never it will not be. And again, it depends on multiple parameters. So, but if you are buying 1 kilogram of a sugar or something, it doesn't matter, because a slight change, it's like 1.000, you don't want to go. It can be 9999 point something. So this matters when there is more accuracy. So you have this domestic balance which we used to have in our shops. Nowadays this is also being changed with electronic balance, but still we have this one. We keep 1 kilogram this kilogram weight on one side and keep whatever we have to buy in the other side, and we take it. So as I told, this is now the domestic spring balance. So how this spring balance work? It is in another way. What we do, what we have is a spring. So we know about the spring constant which we have learned in our +2 physics. So the spring compression is directly proportional to weight or mass applied, or the force applied at the most, and force is again proportional to mass. So they keep 1 kilogram and compress the spring, and where it is going to be compressed, they will keep it as 1 kilo, and the double of that is 2 kilo, and it goes like that. So that is how they are calibrating this one. So the advantage of this one is it will work for more time, but the disadvantage is that this can be manipulated, or if it is not properly kept or being hanged something or etc., you can manipulate it, but not much. So compared with this one, this is more accurate, I would say. So then the question comes, how we measure mass in microgravity or zero gravity. We cannot say zero gravity, its actual name is microgravity, where it is in space. So how you do that? So there is something called inertial balance. So as I told previous slide, that there is no gravity in space, so that's why I call this microgravity. Gravity is almost zero. So you need to measure some weight. There also, if you want to take something, especially doing some experiment, you need to take some weight. You need to take the weight of something. So there you have inertial balance, where again it's a spring, and the spring will vibrate at a particular frequency, and as I told, mass is resistance to inertial balance, so it's spring is vibrating. You keep something on that, and there is a reduction in the spring because of the mass applied, and you can measure the weight in space. So that is called inertial balance, that is being used in microgravity experiments. So if you are more interested on these kind of mass and things, you can visit this site called Veritasium YouTube channel, Veritasium, where they have very beautiful videos on this kind of things. So now I am going into mass of an atom. So again, mass of an atom, again you can express in kilogram. Of course, that is a SI unit supposed to be, but the mass of an atom is so small. So in order to measure this one, we use another prototype, which is 1/12 of carbon 12. That's what we call atomic mass unit. So what is that? You take carbon 12, pure carbon 12, and you divide that into that one carbon-12 mass into, or one carbon-12 you take it as 12 AMU. So divide it by 12, you get something. So it's again comparison. The previous one was we are comparing with a prototype of kilogram. Instead, in an atomic mass unit, you compare with 1 by 12th mass of carbon-12. So it's somewhat similar. So both are like complementary to each other. So 1 AMU, what's the mass in kilogram? It is 1.66054 into 10 to the power minus 27 kilogram. You can exactly calculate this one. So, and this, as you can see, it's 10 to the power minus 27 kilograms. So it's so small. So hydrogen atom weighs 1.008 AMU, which is actually relative mass, because hydrogen has hydrogen. If you take hydrogen, hydrogen has hydrogen, deuterium, and tritium. So it's slightly above 1.008 because of its relative proportion. You get 1.008. And hydrogen, if you weigh, the mass is 1.6738. So you can see 1 AMU is not one hydrogen atom. You can see that because it is 1.008. And carbon-12, it is 12.0107 because carbon has 12, 13, 14, etc. isotopes. So you get this much kilogram. So this is just the basic I just touched upon because to remind you on, because we are going to talk about the atomic mass. So also, since this quantity is so small, we'll take a quantity of number of atoms, which is atoms or molecule, which is Avogadro's number. The value is 6.023 10 to the power 23. So Avogadro's number is a constant, or which is just a mere number, like dozen or something. Dozen, couple, gross, etc. we used to say. So Avogadro's number is just a collection of number, which is this much number. So you take any substance of this much number, you say it's Avogadro's number. Okay, and we always measure, or we always compare this much Avogadro's number is what we have. So that we call mole. How much number of moles we have. Okay. Okay. Now coming into mass spectrometry. So mass spectrometry usually appears to be regarded as a very mysterious method. It's just good enough to supply some molecular weight information. But what I would suggest, or I would like to tell you in this seminar, is not much on what we study in our degree or our curriculum, especially in degree as well as PG. So there we actually say that, okay, mass spectrometry, the basic thing you say, and then you will tell that, okay, this can be used to measure molecular weight, and that's it. But that's not the thing actually. So that's what I would say. So this is kind of a point one. Now I would like to say like 3 points, the most important takeaway messages. So this is first point. So mass spectrometry is not just to measure molecular weight. So it can study structure of a molecule, not just mass. So you can study the structure of molecule, which I will be saying something on that, which I will be talking on something. It can study reactions and kinetics, kind of extra like trapping intermediates. It can do a lot of surface analysis, which is surface induced dissociation, ion sputtering. Little bit I will be going through this one. Sampling, just being in pharmaceutical, biochemistry, etc., etc. We are doing a lot of sampling by mass spectrometry. So sampling is one of the most important application of mass spectrometry. There are material preparation like nano deposition, nano spray, etc. There are a lot of forensic application. There are a lot of handheld mass spectrometries which we are using now for forensic application. There are astrochemistry, which is something I will be talking at the end as time permits, which I have done. You should know that mass spectrometry is not a spectrum. It can be imaging also. It can be used as an imaging tool also. So mass spectrometry imaging is nowadays there. And again, this mass spectrometry imaging are highly useful for plant metabolites, study plant metabolites, cancer cells, therapeutics, cell pathology, etc. So it has a wide variety of application in biology. So this is a few I have listed. You can keep on listing this one. So this is the point one, as I told. Point number one, which is a kind of a takeaway message, that mass spectrometry is not just a simple tool to measure molecular weight. That is gone. Unfortunately, we are only restricting because of our stressful career. We are our topics which we are only talking about the molecular weight measurement and some rearrangement, organic rearrangement is only what we have learned in our curriculum. So this talk, I would like to say something more about that. I will not be talking anything which we have already discussed or which you will be studying, like a rearrangement reactions and all. Okay, so point number 2, the terminology. So it's always mass spectrometry, not mass spectroscopy. Many people used to have this kind of a confusion. It's mass spectrometry or mass spectroscopy. You should know that it is mass spectrometry, not mass spectroscopy. Why? Because spectroscopy always, you may be aware, like it consists of a spectrum of energy and it is plotted as energy versus intensity. So if you take infrared spectroscopy or rotational spectroscopy, microwave spectroscopy, UV visible or photoelectron spectroscopy, everything, the plot will be always an absorbance or the intensity versus energy. It can be wavelength, it can be in frequency, it can be in ED, etc., etc. So it's always energy versus intensity. Okay, so that is what is called spectroscopy. But spectrometry, in mass spectrometry, actually intensity is plotted, but it's plotted against mass by charge ratio. I will be talking on this mass by charge. So you can see that there is no energy plot. It's actually a spectrum of mass by its charge. It can be +1 charge, then you have a peak. The same peak you can get if it is a +2 charge, then you can get exactly the half of their another peak. So it's mass by charge ratio, that ratio versus intensity. That is what we are going to plot in a mass spectrometry. So it's always mass spectrometry, not mass spectroscopy. But earlier, when mass spectrometry was invented, there they used to have an energy plot because the intensity and the kinetic energy of this mass was actually measured. So initially they used to have this kind of terminology, but that was completely disregarded later. And now if you say someone on mass spectroscopy, then people will think, okay, you don't know anything about mass spectrometry. That's why you are telling mass spectroscopy. So you should always say it's mass spectrometry, unlike other spectroscopies. So this is point number 2. Then point number 3, mass spectrometry deals with gas phase species and ions. So there is something on vacuum technology being applied in mass spectrometry. So just introducing you into what you are doing in a mass spectrometry, you have a sample, you make it into gas phase. So you should be remembering the 3 phases: liquid, gas, and solid. So you should have a gas phase system to analyze this one. Definitely, you can start with a liquid phase and all, but definitely at some point in time you have to have a gas phase in a mass spectrometer. So always a mass spectrometer will have some kind of a vacuum technology being inbuilt with the spectrometer. So I'll talk a little bit on gas phase to just remind you on what we have understood about this one. So this is the thing we do. We have a gas phase ion. We take a sample, whether it is solid, liquid, or gas, whatever. You take it into gas phase, means it is in the gas phase, and then you ionize it. You make ions. So because a neutral molecule, they cannot be detected or they cannot be accelerated. So you have to make it as ion. So you should have an ionizer there. Then what you do, you fly this ion and weigh it between mass and intensity, or you fly this one to some extent. Somehow you fly it and change according to its mass, and you plot mass by charge, which is x value, versus ion intensity y value. So you have a plot of x and y. So x axis will be mass by charge, which is m by z, and y will be ion intensity. That's what you get it. So this involves gas phase species or ions is my point number 3. So let us talk something on gas phase chemistry. So gas phase species are, we say, as such dilute species, or it's having less interaction. So this we used to have the theory based on kinetic theory of gases and Maxwell-Boltzmann equations and velocities. So the velocity of a gas phase species, which can be determined using the kinetic theory of gases, and based on that we have these ideal gas equations and all, but the kinetics we can measure it. So let us take into example a species which is in a gas phase, which is spherical according to kinetic theory of gases. When they are colliding each other, so this is kind of a collision, and this is some kind of a collision diameter we say, because this is the effective area of collision, because there is an atom, this atom can go something like this. So this is called the effective collision area, and which is given by A equal to pi d square, where d is the diameter of a molecule, which we are understudying. So the area of collision, which is the cross-sectional area, is equal to pi d square. Then you take this area here, pi d square, and then you ask this molecule to move towards some kind of distance. Let us take L or something, any distance. So when it is moving, there are other molecules around it in gas phase alone. And again, according to the kinetic theory of gases, we consider these molecules as point masses. So that is why these are given as a dot. So when this molecule is moving to this distance, it is going to come in contact or going to collide with some certain number of molecules which is on its way. It's like a car which having a certain velocity moving through a traffic. So let us take this this molecule or the species as a car, and then it is going to move. So when it is going to move, it's going to hit with some other molecules. So how this kind of a collision can take place depends on how fast this molecule is there and how good the traffic or how many molecules are there on its way, etc. And also this collision time. If there is bigger molecule like a truck going through this one and a car moving, there is less chance that a car can hit by each other than a truck. So it depends on its collision diameter or collision area also. So mean free path is something called the molecule starts to move from point A and it is moving to some point B, and the first collision, the distance with which it can move without a colliding with something, that is called the mean free path. Again, as I told, the mean free path depends on the velocity, how fast the molecule is moving. So that is what the distance, and into time, how much fast it is. Then its volume of interaction, or as I told, the diameter, collision diameter, and number of molecules. So velocity, distance, velocity into distance, the distance traveled, the number of interactions in the sense how big the molecule is, volume of interactions, that how big the molecule is. Third one, number of molecules which is there in the unit volume. But here there is a problem. We are not considering the other molecule is also moving. It's the first thing we are considering, the other molecules are stretched, but that molecule is also moving. So there is a chance that like both the cars are moving and then the other car can move or change its path while it is coming. So considering all those things, the velocity, real velocity is √2 of this velocity. We have put we ask this the velocity of this molecule, but there's a velocity from the other molecule, so it's √2 times of that velocity is only being applied to this one. So effective volume of target sweep pi d square √2 v2. So lambda, which is what is called the mean free path, is equal to, we can get this equation reduced to 1 by √2 pi d square nv. So √2 is pi d square is the volume, and nv is number of molecules. So we have neglected or kind of approximated the velocity as a constant. So you again substitute for nv using the equation, and we get the mean free path is equal to RT divided by √2 pi d square Na into P. So mean free path, leave about all derivation. What the derivation says that it is inversely proportional to pressure. Okay, so mean free path, which we used to give lambda, is inversely proportional to pressure. Which what this means? So if we want a molecular species without any interaction, we need to decrease the pressure. Means as kind of an ambulance has to go so fast to destination A to destination B, like this thing happened very recently in Kerala or for some heart transplant. So the moment they come for the heart transplant, they transfer this one, they clear everything, every road, so that the ambulance is supposed to reach the destination as fast as possible. So this is kind of without any interaction. So if you want, similarly in a mass spectrometry or any of these gas species, you need to move from point A to point B. You should not encounter with anything. If it is encountering, then it will heat, its kinetic energy is decreased, everything. So you need to make sure that the molecule from point A is reaching point B without any interaction. The only thing you have to do is decrease the pressure. So the value of pressure depends on how extent you need to run this species. Again, you have a mass spectrometer and you have to run from point A to point B to analyze it. As I told, it's ionized, and then you have to analyze it by running it through flying it. So if you have to fly for 1 meter, you can fly it for 1 meter, you can fly it for half meter, you can fly it for like 1 or 2 meters. That's maximum kind of thing. So that you can see a few centimeters. If you have to do, you have to get a pressure of 10 to the power minus 4 millibar. So few centimeter is what we used to see in electron spectrometers like scanning electron microscopes and all. So scanning electron microscope, if you go and see any of these instruments, there will be again some vacuum pumps attached to that, and these vacuum pumps actually make the path of the electron to travel a few centimeters to hit on the sample. So vacuum where they have is high vacuum or little bit high vacuum, 10 to the power minus 4 to 10 to the power minus 6, lesser than 10 to the power minus 6. But if you want to go more than a meter, this is simple calculation which you can put it at the top equation, this equation. So around 1 meter it should be 10 to the power minus 6 to 10 to the power minus 8, and higher than a few meters like 1.5 meters to above, you need to have kind of an ultra high vacuum which is like 10 to the power minus 8 to 10 to the power minus 10. So you need that kind of a heavy vacuum pumps to be attached to a mass spectrometer in order to work. So that is point number 3 which I told. So this mean free path is a very important parameter in mass spectrometer. So whenever you talk about some mass spectrometer, you should think about how much distance you have to travel, make this one to travel. Okay. So now I'm going into mass spectrometer different parts. A little bit introduction I have given on this one. So you have 3 parts basically. One was an ionizer. So you have different methods of ionizing a molecule. There are different theories of ionization and there are instrumentation. So this is very vast thing. So I will be talking on a few ionizer, few generally used ionizer, and few of its theory and instrumentation. So here are a list of things. I will be talking on few of this as I told. Then there is an analyzer. So you ionize it, then you ask this to fly for some time. So that is what the output what we get is x-axis, separating this one. So you have different time of flight, linear quadrupole, 3D quadrupole, quantum, Fourier transform, ion cyclotron resonance, and hybrid system like chromatography. So I will be talking again on a few of this as it goes. Then you have a detector to plot the y-axis. So detector again has dynode electron multiplier, channel electron multipliers, plates, focal plane detectors, photo detectors. Okay. So not only this one, there are some kind of a data output or kind of a transformation we can do, like a Fourier transform being applied to analyzers. Fine. Okay. Fourier transform can be applied to this analyzer, or you can have MS like MSN output. You say you take one ion, you analyze it and connect one of the ion, take again back one of that daughter ion or something you say, and then you analyze it again. That's called MS, which I'll be talking a few on that, how you do that. So going straight into ionizer. So ionizer, there are 2 types of ionization: hard ionization and soft ionization. So hard ionization is what was the first being invented, and which is that we have keep on studying in our curriculum. So that's not the only ionizer. So there should be hard ionization and soft ionization. So let's talk first on hard ionization. Hard ionization is known to be as electron ionization. So what you do, you have a parent molecule, you ask it to move through a stream of electron. There's an electron beam we say, and then the electron being going to be heated on this kind of on this parent molecule, and then some orientation happens because of the kinetic energy transfer of electron onto the molecule, and it get ionized. So this is the equation, M plus E giving M plus dot plus 2 electron. So this is very simple equation. You will think that why this is only happening. This is not the only thing happening. There are multiple things happening, but the chance of this one only is more because of only one reason. The most means, as you may be knowing on organic about the carbocations and carbanions, its stability and all, depend on how stable this species is, M plus. It will be having intensity difference. Of course, this will reorient and disintegrate into different species, but the stability will be determined by its stability of this particular ion, M plus ion. So which is what is called parent molecular species, molecular ion, parent molecular ion. But that can be, as I told, we are dealing with gas phase ions, gas phase species. So the ions, the chance of getting collided with another ion is less because the vacuum is already reduced. So the electron is going and hitting on a single molecule, and the single molecule has some energy, and then the energy being need to be used by itself. It cannot transfer to some other molecule or something else to have some reaction or something. That reactions are possible if you increase the pressure. So usually at this kind of a lower pressure vacuum, the molecule is alone, all alone, and it is being hit with the electron. So it will rearrange itself, and depend on its rearrangement, it will give M plus or then again other things. So then you have chance like why M plus 2, M2 plus. There is also a chance, but still that this all depends on its probability and depend on species to species. A few molecules will give M2 plus ion, but very less. Its intensity will be definitely less. Okay. So now going into a little bit of instrumentation. So how you do this? The big figure shows that this is a filament. This is a tungsten filament. The same filament which we are being using in the incandescent lab. So as you know, the tungsten has this kind of a electron emitting property if you apply potential. So you have a filament, then you heat it up or apply potential, electrons are ejected, then you put some kind of a magnet there. So the electrons are aligned from this point to this one. So as I shown in the previous one, there is a stream of electron. So this is what the stream of electron. You apply, you insert the gas molecule from the other side, other plane, and then you have a repeller here so that whatever ions are formed, it will go out of the chamber, ionization chamber. So this is what is the general instrumentation does. So you have a very same filament what we are using in incandescent lamp. So going into second one, chemical ionization, as I told, which is called CI. As I told just now, that let's take methane as an example. Methane is being hit with an electron and forming CH4 plus dot. But the CH4 plus is not that stable enough. If you give extra methane into that one, that is CH4 plus CH4, it can undergo a reaction, which is what is called chemical ionization, forming CH5 plus. So this is a kind of reaction. This is very specific to molecule. Again, you don't want to put methane inside it. You can put some other molecule. It can be argon or some other gas molecule. So that is another form of doing ionization. So you trigger the reaction by a little bit of chemical ionization species, and then you insert some other molecule into that, and then some reactions proceed. That's called protonation, abstraction, adduct formation, etc. So again, using some other chemical, you can ionize a species. So again, you can see this methane is formed. You can ionize this M. M is another species. That species also can be ionized using this method. So that's why it's called chemical ionization. You have a chemical species which is reactive, which is formed by some way, and then you react with that species with something, you can ionize that. So this is another method. So both these methods, both electron ionization and chemical ionization, are hard ionization technique. Why? Because if you have small molecule, it is fine. Like methane, it can form all together what we used to learn in our curriculum. Like it has 16, you can get 15, 14 and 30 and maximum 12. So that is simple. If you put ethanol, you have 32, methanol, you have 32, then you have subsequent ions. So ethanol is something more. But think about something like a protein molecule or a polymer molecule. What will happen? Let's take a polymer molecule. You have a very big polymer molecule, and its smallest species is CH2, or if you take polyethylene, you have CH2 or something like that. So if you apply this electron ionization, electron impact ionization, electron ionization, what you get is always small pieces of this CH2, and you cannot extract anything from polymer. You know that polymer is this one. You can't get a mass of polymer. You can't get what is the average mass of a polymer or anything. So that's why it's called a hard ionization, because once you apply it, it triggers and makes it a small species. So small species, this ionization method is fine, or for very small molecule. You can't do anything with macromolecules or bigger molecule. And again, this will be huge intense peaks what we will be getting. So you can't again extract anything. For example, if you take a polymer, you will be getting a lot of peaks from carbon 12 to something like maybe 50, 60, etc. So you get all hydrocarbon peaks when you apply chemical ionization to a polymer molecule like polyethylene. So that is not a good idea ionization technique for macromolecules. So then comes the soft ionization method. So there are few soft ionization methods. So I'll be talking about electron spray ionization and matrix assisted laser desorption. So what is electron spray ionization? So electron spray ionization is being used like now in good way. Most of the instruments which you have electron ionization as the source. It is comparatively cheaper, not so cheaper like electron ionization. Electron ionization is much cheaper. As we told, you need a vacuum pump and a tungsten filament. So here we need something more. So what is the basic principle? So this was actually run by John Bennett and he was awarded for the discovery of soft ionization, ESI, electron spray ionization, in Nobel Prize in 2002. So what you do? So there are few theories being in conflict, but what people believe as of now is you ionize, you take a solution and then spray it with a capillary through a capillary. So you have analyte and along with some kind of a nitrogen gas or some nebulizing gas we say. So what happens? The liquid which is with analyte plus the solvent, that's what we call the being sprayed. When it is coming to the tip, this is kind of the spray tip we say. So there's kind of a cone form and there is some kind of a pre-formed ions inside this one. If it is not forming pre-ion, you have to add something on else, like usually there is some ionization things like you can add sodium or some ions into that. Usually there will be some pre-ion form. So that pre-ions is what we are going to measure. So what happens? So slowly this molecule, this is the tip of a mass spectrometer ionization chamber, and the solvent plus analyte is flowing through this one, and at the tip it goes into some kind of a cone and it gets expanded. And once it is getting expanded, the solvent also get evaporated. So solvent get evaporated, that's what it is shown here. So this is kind of a multiply charged solvent plus analyte, and solvent slowly evaporate, the charge being transferred slowly into the analyte, and finally the analyte is being ionized. So this is what is happening, and only thing is that this ionization is happening so slowly compared with electron ionization. That's why it's called soft. The species as it is, if we are taking a polymer, the polymer as it is more likely to be intact, or polymer becoming, total polymer molecule will become a charged species. So the macromolecule, the charged species, is going into the mass spectrometer. So that is what is called soft ionization method. So one of the soft ionization which is being used is electrospray ionization. So you can say electrospray. So one more thing is that you apply a very high potential here. So that's why electrospray we say. So there is a potential being applied, very high voltage potential, something like 1 to 2 kilovolts being applied at the tip. So that is why there is a flow like this, and the tip is forming kind of a Taylor form. And all those properties make this one slowly ionized. So there, if it's not forming, usually the high voltage and the solvent makes a charged species. If not, we may add some charge making species into that. So you can see here, we are giving a positive potential here and attached with the instrument tip. So this is what it is doing. I'll show you later a picture of that, what it is. So the next application, as we told, The same thing, the same technique ESI being used for imaging a sample. So that is what is called desorption electron spray ionization. We call DESI. So desorption electron spray ionization. Here, only thing is the sample is on a surface. The nebulizer and the solvent is being pushed into using an angle like this. So you can see the analyte and the solvent along with the nebulizing gas is being heated onto the sample, and this angle, as I told before, this is going into the mass spectrometer. So the potential is being applied here at the tip of this cone, and then this is going here and taking it up. Then you can sample it like this. You can move the sample in two-dimensional. So you can take the intensity of species from the sample. So you can see here, okay. So this is a simple picture of taking an image of a tablet. So this is a nebulizing gas plus solvent spray onto this one, and you can see the angle here, and this is the tip of the mass spectrometer. So it goes into the analyzer. So this is kind of an angle. So this guy is being used. This is the tip of the mass spectrometer. He has put some kind of a tail here. It's a tube here again, and this will be having under vacuum. So he have a spray here, and he is being sprayed into a flower. So he can image directly in situ. In situ means at the same time they can analyze what is the molecule present in a flower. You don't want to do any sample preparation. In case of ESI, you need a sample preparation. You have to mix it with analyte and put it into this one. So DESI is a further bigger application, and you can image it. So the image looks like this. So you can see here different cells imaging. This is being used for tumor cell imaging, cancer, different things. So you can see here the signatures of different peaks can be used for this one. So next is matrix assisted laser desorption ionization. So here instead of the other one, you mix it with a matrix. So matrix can be, I can show in, it's kind of a different molecules. So they will be having kind of a conjugated species, and then this analyte is mixed with a matrix. So matrix is some kind of a molecule. Then you put it into this kind of a plate, and then excite it with a laser. So you have a pulse laser beam, and the laser beam, the energy of the laser beam will be excited or absorbed by the matrix, and then the energy is being transferred to the molecule, the analyte molecule, and then slowly this molecule gets ejected out as an ionic species. This is what is used in matrix assisted laser desorption MALDI. So this is MALDI is now being extensively used in our biomolecule chemistry or biomolecule analysis. So these are few metrics used. So this is kind of a trial and error method, which metrics you should use. So for specific kind of molecule, you have to use a specific metric. So you have to do a trial and error method, and there are solvent different method, there are wavelength use, all those things. So now, as I told the previous thing, there's another technique called collision induced dissociation. So collision induced dissociation, you have an ionic molecule or non-ionic molecule, you collide it with a you collide it with a gas like argon or something which is having good pressure. So you take the molecule inside and collide it with some other molecule instead of electron. You can have some kind of a soft ionization which is called collision induced dissociation. Again, this is very specific for most of the molecule. CID, collision induced dissociation, will not be as same as or as good as the other two techniques, but you can use it for multiple things. So the collision gas usually used are argon, helium, nitrogen, carbon dioxide. Usually we take non-reactive gases, because if it is going to react, then it's not of use. Then the last ionization technique I would say is the surface induced dissociation and chemical sputtering. So what you do, you have a sample surface, you accelerate some ion, already preformed ion, that can be, as I told, can be argon ion or something heavy ion. You accelerate it and heat it on the surface, or you put it slowly. So these are different methods by which the energy, thermal, hyperthermal and low energy, you can do at multiple energy. You hit it with very high energy, which is called sputtering, which is being used to clean the surface in very good accuracy, or you can use that ejected electron for deposition also. So that's called sputtering. Then you have, if it is having at 1 kilovolt higher, it's called sputtering. If you do it in 1 to 100 electron volt energy, the kinetic energy of the ion, then you have multiple things. You can soft land it, you can reactively land it, you can do low energy sputtering, means you do some kind of a reaction on the surface, you can make a pattern on the surface, etc. If you do at very low energy, just it will be having some kind of a scattering. So again, that can be used to study the surface also. There are multiple things being done with this kind of a techniques. So with this, I am stopping with the analyzer, sorry, the ionizer. Now I'm going into analyzer. So there are a lot of analyzers, and the best one which is being used is time of flight, TOF, which is what we used to know about it. Then we have a quadrupole and a quadruple trap, and I'll be talking on linear Fourier transform ion cyclotron resonance also. So how to create an ion beam? As I told, you have an ion, you have some ions created, then you apply a plate, and like as it is shown, then you accelerate it. So once it goes through this one, it's an ion beam. So once you create an ion, it moves through this one, so it's an ion beam. And this ion beam usually depends on its kinetic energy. Its potential energy is what we are making it to move. Then it moves with respect to its kinetic energy. Potential energy is converted to its kinetic energy, and this entire derivation shows that this kinetic energy or time of flight depends on its mass and charge ratio. So if it is more charge, it will go faster. If it has lesser mass, it will move faster. So you have two ions, and depend on its mass, once it is flowing through some time, it gets separated. It's like you have a bulky fatty fellow and a lean guy who has same capacity to run, asked to run, or through some kind of a troubled situation, or asked to run them together, then definitely the fatty guy cannot move as fast as the tall guy, means lean guy. The same thing is what is applying. This is what we used to learn. This is not the only method. Okay, so this I told, this is a simple field. So you can allow these ions to move as long as possible, and then you can what to say, like resolute, have higher resolution, or differentiate two ions of the almost same mass. So that is called reflectron time of flight. So you can analyze here itself. Instead, you apply an extra voltage and reflect this one. So all those reflection is being done by an electromagnet or electric field, I would say. Electric field only, not magnets even. The field itself, and that field is there to make this thing to run, potential energy. So there are magnetic sector and electrostatic sector analyzed filters. You can apply magnetic field or electric field. Usually what we used to do is electric field sector. Magnetic field sector being used initially or from during all time, but now electric field and electric analyzers are easy to maintain, as well as it is more, what to say, it is less cost than making a magnet, a permanent magnet. So we used to do an electric sector instead of magnetic sector. Okay, now we'll talk about quadrupole mass analyzer. So this is the most used mass spectrometer analyzer ever, and it is cheaper also. So what it is being done? So quadrupole mass analyzer have 4 poles. So you can see in the picture. In these 4 poles, you apply potential of different dimensions. So it can be 2 of this one, y, x. You can see this one is applied positive, this one is negative, this is positive, this is negative. 4 different potentials is being applied. So then what happens? You ask this ion, let us take one ion, it's moving inside through this, asking this ion to flow through this kind of a pole. So let us take, this is a cross section of this one. So my ion is standing at the middle, and at one point in time, this is positive ion and this is negative ion. So definitely my ion is positive, sorry, positive potential and negative potential. My ion is a positive ion. So definitely this molecule this ionic species will move towards B, which is negatively charged volt. Okay, but what we do is, you can see U plus V cos omega t, we switch this one in next second, or kind of a frequency, or for the 1 second this B was positive, the next second we will make B as negative. So what happened? The negative ion was, positive ion was standing here, seeing this B as negative volt, it starts to move towards B, suddenly B becomes positive. So what happens is it starts to deflect, then deflect towards A or the other side. And at the next second, again the molecule will be seeing A as positive, so again it will deflect and start towards B. So this goes like that, and we can make this molecule to move like a fashion like this, as it is shown here, and go out. And how this molecule move depends on its mass, because there is a frequency, and lower mass molecule, lean molecule like hydrogen, it will move faster. But a higher molecule or higher mass molecule will see this one and start to move, and the next second the other one will be positive, so it moves slowly. So by sweeping the frequency, that is cos omega t, you can ask this ion to move in a very proper way. So only one ion will go at one frequency, and some other higher mass ion will go at some higher frequency. So that is what is quadrupole. So quadrupole is the simplest or cheapest thing used here. So quadrupole mass analyzer is have high ion transmission, means you can get with lower amount of ions, are lightweight, very compact, and comparatively lower price than the reflectron mass spectrometer analyzer. Have low ion acceleration voltage, you can apply very low voltage and do this one. Allow high scan speeds, since scanning is realized by solely sweeping electrical potential. So you are just sweeping the electrical potential from positive to negative with a particular frequency. Not only this, people have developed something called quadrupole ion trap. Okay, so this was made into kind of a shape like this. I will show you a simple video which is called a pole trap, which is called as rotating saddle. So you can see this is the shape of the stage. I am trying to make this ball to stand there, but it is not possible, right? So let us take this ball as an ion, and you have a thing like this, so it's not standing there. How to make this one stand? Very simple. You rotate this saddle. Okay, so you start rotating. The rotation should be at some point of a frequency. The frequency is very important. Depends on the frequency. You put that ball or the ion there, it will stay there. Okay, so this frequency of this rotation is depending on how much weight this ball carries. So if you reduce the frequency, you can see increase or reduce the frequency, at some point in time this will go out. You can see that this is getting stopped. Okay, so at some frequency only this will be forming. So this is what is being used in the quadrupole ion trap. So this is the shape. You apply a frequency. So this is a three-dimensional kind of a saddle there. You apply an ion, you apply a potential, you apply a frequency of potential, means shifting this one positive for some time, this one positive for other some time. Then you can trap some ion. So using this trapping, you can analyze or separate ions. This is the quadrupole ion trap, and this is being used for MS analysis, which I would say you have an ion, you dissociate that again by collision, and then you can analyze. So you have a peak, a higher peak, you take that peak along, and again you can make mass spectrum of that particular peak. That's called MS. So you do one MS, you can do another MS on the same ion, you can do multiple MS on that. That's what the tandem mass spectrometer means. So finally, I would like to say that about the Fourier transform ion cyclotron. So you may be knowing something on the cyclotron. So you apply again a frequency here, you have a mass ion. So this is the highest resoluting mass spectrometer we have ever made. It's very costly. So this is being done at very low pressure, 10 to the power minus 10 to the 10 to the power minus 11 millibar, and is used with the super cooled superconducting magnets. It's the heaviest or most costly thing ever. So cyclotron is a particle accelerator and its frequency depends on mass by ratio. So you apply FT, Fourier transform. It's a bit complicated and I'm not going into more into that. So you can do separate ion with high resolution, or you can separate 12.001 4 times 001 and 12 point something else. So something up to 4 decimals you can separate using this Fourier transform ion cyclotron resonance. So at the end, mass detectors. So mass detectors are much simple. You need to take the number of ions going coming out, how much intensity some particular ion has. So usually the incident ion strikes a dynode surface which emits electron. So ion is hitting on a surface and it emits an electron equivalent to that, which is what is called dynode. The material which we are being used here is based on cesium, antimony, gallium phosphorus, beryllium oxide kind of combination. It's you can say Faraday cup, which is the first one which being used. Now it is being done into electron multipliers where an array of Faraday cup is being kept, or you can put a photon multiplier where ion is heating, produces a photon, and then photon is being converted into an electron. So that is photon multiplier. So these detectors are not much complicated thing. You have to just count number of ions heating on that one. Okay. So then next is mass resolution and isotopic distribution. So resolution means what? You have to separate two ions, right? So that is what is called resolution. So resolution depends on multiple factors. It's given by a term called M by delta R, or this is the full width half maximum of 2 peaks. So you have 2 peaks, for example. Let us take this one, bovine insulin. This is an insulin, and if it is low resolution mass spec, you get a very big peak, very broad peak like this. In high resolution, you get peaks like this. This all because of the isotopic pattern, because there is C254, H has 3, C has different, N has some 2-3 isotope, and this isotopic distribution, you get this kind of peak. Actually, these are the peaks. These are different ions possible, and at low resolution, you get this kind of a peak. So, okay, this there was another way to differentiate CO plus and N2 plus. So CO plus and N2 plus, if you count, it's 28, but actually CO, if you count by 4th digit, it will be little bit 27 point something will come, and nitrogen will be 28.001. So there will be a peak at 27.995 and a peak at 28.002. So you can differentiate these two peaks, means you have a high resolution mass spectrometer. Again, you can do kind of a isotope, not only isotope, you can do some kind of a differentiation in isomers, because isomers, if you take, there will be linear isomers are same mass, but at the same time they have different shape. So you can ask this molecule to go through some kind of a system like an argon gas or something flowing in the opposite direction, and you can separate. So there are multiple ways to separate this kind of ion. So I'm summing up, it's already 3 o'clock. So mass spectrometry, point number 1 is widely used as a powerful analytical technique in various fields. So it's mass spectrometry and not mass spectroscopy. And mass spectrometry deals with gas phase ion, its ionization, then analyzing them by separating them with their mass to charge ratio by asking them to fly for some time, and then plotting them against their intensity. So various ionization techniques: electron impact ionization, chemical ionization, electron spray ionization, matrix MALDI, and soft ionization. A few MALDI and ESI being the soft, and electron EI and CI, they are hard ionization, they are being discussed. Analyzers like dimer flight, magnetic electrostatic sector, as well as quadrupole mass analyzers were discussed a little bit. Detectors are also being discussed. So finally, just stopping, this is kind of a picture of a mass spectrometer. So this is kind of an advanced system. This was being used in our lab when I did my PhD in IIT Madras. So we have our own mass spectrometer here. So this is from Waters. So the model is called CINAP G2S, and this entire mass spectrometer costs something like 5.5 crore. So this is coupled with LC, like liquid chromatography. So I have not talked, I have just told that one. You can separate liquid chromatography and analyze using mass spectrometer. So this mass spectrometer has ESI. The source itself is ESI. You can change it to a multi. Then inside you have a quadrupole, you have an ion trap, then a reflectron micro analyzer. So coupled with 3 types of analyzers. So you can see the reflectron here. So this is kind of analyzer there. And they have some kind of an ion chamber inside. So you can do some kind of a reaction kinetics kind of analysis there. So that's why it's very costly, and it is only all around the world. These kind of instruments are being built for 1 or 2 or maximum of 5. That's all, not more than that. So that's kind of a cost mass spectrometer have, but still it is highly useful. So this is what the instrument which I have built. So I don't want to go into much detail. So it looks like so complicated. So what I can say that most of the things what you see here is the chamber and all those for the vacuum systems. And what we have is a simple quadrupole inside, not one quadrupole, several quadrupole, and it's being coupled with infrared spectroscopy. So what my experiment was to build this instrument by attaching different things. We bought one by one parts, calibrated everything, have done some experiment at low temperature, simulating astrochemical conditions. So this was my PhD, and it took me starting from scratch to learn how to do vacuum science, then how to calibrate mass spectrometer, and finally into data. It took 5 years, and at the end I got like 2 or 3 papers. That's all maximum, but I have learned them more. So that's something different. So instrumentation is something highly different. I would like to say add one more thing. Most of the people doesn't get an opportunity to hands-on experiment on mass spectrum. You may get something on infrared, UV and all. Why? Only because of the 2 reasons. One is these instruments are so costly, and the maintain is also so costly, because you need to have this kind of a vacuum there. You need to have a lot of circumstances to make this one to work. And most of the time, this mass spectrometer will go bad with a bad hand. So my entire PhD, more than 1.5 to 2 years, I was fixing this instrument other than doing experiment. So that was my most of the experiment which I have done, because it was custom built. But if you take the other instrument, which is being a company, so the company people also will come, so they will be more experienced, so that will be easy for them to do. So this is another instrument which was my senior did, and we were doing some experiment here also. So this is a smaller version of the other one. So finally, like you can see the picture. This is my Professor T. Pradeep, who was awarded Padma Shri very recently. So the person who is sitting is a giant mass spectrometrist. He is from the Purdue. He actually discovered or invented this BSOF electron ionization. He has a very big lab in Purdue, and one of the top lab. Maybe most likely he may be getting a Nobel Prize on this kind of speech. So he's very big giant. He was having a good collaboration with us. And this is myself in my 2nd year, and this is my senior. So this is his wife, Professor Cook's wife, Graham Cook's wife. So thank you all. You are welcome for any question. So I think I have taken a few more minutes, extra.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robin, for the wonderful presentation. You are actually traveling from very fundamental things to the advanced science. And now the session is open for doubts and clarifications. You can post your doubts in the chat box. Robin, we have a couple of questions here.
Yeah.
Can you please briefly comment on metastable ions? A question from Praveen Prakash. Can you please briefly comment on metastable ions?
Okay. So metastable ions, what we can say is it's all on chemistry. So it's something different from whether you have to just analyze something. You have a sample, you need to say whether the sample is this one. For example, I have told forensic or something we are using in airport or analyze the detector. So there you don't want to say anything on the ions or something. You have to have a some ion, specific ion. If it is there, you say, okay, this is having some detective. It's true. Instead, if you want to study something on some ion property or the stability of ion, then only you have to go on this metastability and all those things. So there you have to do some kind of a reaction intermediate studies and all those things. So what I would say is that what we learn in our curriculum is very basic on carbocation reaction, but if you go into real reaction, real science, we don't want to worry about this one at all, because what we are doing is an analysis. I hope.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you please tell something about the coupled techniques like TGA-MS, like that?
Okay. So as I told, this MS, basically you have ionizer, analyzer, and detector. So you leave out detector usually have photon or electron multiplier. So analyzer and this one is what we used to do. So if you have the sample, what we are going to inject is small species, like a small molecule in something like 1 to 100 mass range, you can use a general electron ionizer. But as I told, it is very hard ionizer, so it's very difficult for you to get good data out of that, unlike you are doing something with 100 mass. So whenever you are using a higher mass elements, higher mass molecules, definitely you want a soft ionization method. But so mostly the cheapest among the soft ionization is ESI, electron spray ionization, and MALDI is something different. So MALDI definitely will be costly. So coupling, this one, or usually we have an ESI source. So you take out, for example, LC. Usually LC, the liquid chromatography, the solvent will be taken out and put it into an ESI source, and then it's ionized and then analyzed using any of these techniques. So usually, if your species is not very high enough, you can use something like a quadrupole or quadrupole drops. So that's what being used mostly.
Okay, then why we are saying the term mass spectrometry, not spectroscopy? Question from
this I have. Okay. This I have explained once. So mass spectroscopy is actually not spectroscopy is actually a plot of energy that is in x-axis versus intensity. So here in mass spectrometry, we are not putting any energy into that. We are actually, it's a spectrum of mass by charge ratio. That's the ratio. So it's unitless. So its mass is being plotted. So there is no energy involved. So we cannot say it's a scopy. It's always a metry, spectrometry. That is the main reason why it is so.
Okay. Then a question from Yogita More. Sometime daughter ion also give the base peak. Why?
Daughter ion also give a base peak. I think base peak is something different. Daughter ion, these are two different terms. What I would say, base peak is the most intense peak. That's what we call base peak. So for example, if you put methanol into that, methanol is something like 32. So we may not be getting 32, instead we'll be getting 31, because the most stable peak is CS3+, CS3O+. So it goes like that. Or if you put water is 18. Water gives 18 as the most abundant peak, unlike other molecules. So base peak is something which is having the highest mass, but the daughter ion peak means it can be anything. So parent ion and daughter ion, we say parent ion is the molecular mass peak. That can, if the molecular ion, that is M plus dot, is stable, it will be the base peak. But sometimes it moves other way. So base peak changes like that, depend on the stability.
Okay. How polymers and dendrimers are analyzed?
Okay. So polymers and dendrimers usually being analyzed using MALDI. MALDI, both we can use ESI and MALDI. So as I told, MALDI, this matrix assisted laser desorption, you mix a polymer with a matrix. So then it's being heated or excited using a laser beam. So the laser beam's energy, which will be in UV usually, is being absorbed by this matrix, and the matrix get excited and de-excited. The energy is slowly given to the analyzed species. The polymers, or so they are all macromolecules. So you have to analyze it very softly. So once you analyze it or ionize it, then you can make that ionic species to go inside. So usually you get most 99% you will get the molecular ion peak itself, and then it's +2, +3 kind of ionic species as it goes. So that is how the polymers and biomolecules, everything is being analyzed.
And one question is from Vandana Dwivedi. How mass spectrometry is applied in astroscience?
Okay, so in astroscience, mass spectrometry is widely used. Very simple. You take some kind of a load into, like very recently they have done something into the Mars or some other surface. You need to know what is the species there. So simple way is to analyze this one using a mass spectrometer. So you take the sample by auto sampling method, you take it and analyze it using this one. So the best way or the easiest way and the simplest way, instead of taking a spectrum, because take a infrared spectrum, you need to prepare a sample and do it in that way. And gas phase infrared is not that good enough. So easiest as well as fastest method is mass spectrometer. The sample preparation for mass spectrometer compared with other spectroscopies are easy.
Okay. Can we study the kinetics of a reaction using mass spectrometry? How it is possible?
Yes, kinetics can be studied. As I told, the reaction intermediate, if it is ion, not for all, if it is ionic species, definitely can be done using this mass spectrometer, because in situ analysis, as I told, like you can trap this kind of an ion and make this ion stable for some more time. You can collide with some other ions or some other molecules like argon and all. Then you can study this ion, analyze these ions, how stable is this one, whether this is the structure and all those things. So that is how you can study the intermediates or reaction intermediates, and kinetics also.
Okay, thank you so much, Robin.
Okay.
So if there are no other questions, we can conclude the session. So on behalf of the Department of Chemistry, NSS College Manjeri, I extend sincere thanks to Dr. Robin Rajan for his nice presentation, very informative presentation. And I must say the quadrupole ion trapping, that demonstrations and all was very superb, because we understood that concept very much. Thank you so much, dear Robin.
Thank you, Vineet. Thank you, Vineet. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. For the participants,